neoconservatism, which is now running to a dead end with Wall Street and Katrina and Iraq and Afghanistan, which is the Bush both administration and the end of the age of Reagan. That is now discredited. But there's no alternative yet. And it's only examples. Examples are the go-kart of judgment, Immanuel Kant says. And the younger generation has to have their vision redirected toward examples of persons who go beyond the liberalism and neoliberalism. That's the only way you create social motion and social movements, and we're far from that, but that's the only way out, I would argue. It's the only way out. I ask you a question.
You got it.
Yes. Do you see prophetic Islam expanding, increasing, deepening in the United States?
Well, first of all, let me try and wade my way through the malaise of terminology.
Yes,
and I think that one of the things that, because this is part of the challenge of Islam in America, Islam in America has some very unique challenges. And part of the challenge, and let me speak from my own perspective as a Black American Muslim, because I think that there are so many stories out there that they can't all be sort of represented in a single person. But for me, the real issue, as I tried to articulate in my remarks, is that Islam in America has got to get serious about America. And by that I mean that intellectually, America has got to become the center of religious, serious, indulged contemplation in terms of what it means to be a Muslim of faith and a Muslim of responsibility, a Muslim of courage. You cannot simply manifest your courage, your commitment to Islam, your knowledge of Islam in terms of what you articulate about Afghanistan or Palestine or Iraq, and have nothing to say about the many issues that we've been talking about here. All right? And I think that the issue for Muslims right now, it's a learning process. Islam in America, certainly within the Black American community, it's still a new phenomenon. And right now, there is the challenge of how to master that grand legacy of Islam to the point of getting it to speak effectively, and as you would put it, prophetically, to the realities of American society. This has been my whole project for the last 15 years. And I think that for it to be something that has real value, real staying power, and the ability to inspire, because I do think that the ability to inspire is important, it cannot simply be pragmatic. It's got to be principled. And that means that there has to be time spent agonizing over how one reconciles the dictates of Scripture with the realities of society. And that's a process that we are doggedly engaged in now. And I think that what might not be apparent to a lot of the people in this room is that one of the silver linings, if there can be such a thing, and you know, as a Muslim in America, you got to be careful about how you talk about these things. But if there could be said to be a silver lining in the tragedy of 9/11, it has been precisely that Muslims have been made to see that they're going to have to get serious about America. And that the arena of their activity is going to have to be first and foremost America. So they're going to have to invest in America, and not just in their. I was at a banquet yesterday with Reverend Jackson, and he talked about the necessity of not getting so caught up in saving your little room that you allow the house to burn down. Because if the house burns down, the room is going to burn down. And I think that Muslims are really coming in to an understanding of precisely that reality. And that there are a number of manifestations of this going on around the country. And if I personally have anything to do with it, this will continue and it will become stronger. No question about it.
Oh, no, that's powerfully put. I mean, I wonder to what degree it's a matter of also what it means to be an immigrant, a relatively new immigrant. Oftentimes in America, immigrants come to America and do find opportunities, work very hard, defer gratification, move up, look back on George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and don't understand them as both freedom fighters and slave holders. So when the new Muslims look at America's past, when you look at the past, you can't just look at the good stuff, you got to look at the underside as well. To be an American is to be immersed in both a society that's been able to hammer out rights and liberties because of people willing to sacrifice, but also deep legacies of white supremacy that still permeate up to this very day. And if you're going to embrace America, you got to embrace the whole thing. You got to embrace the whole thing. Why? Because you're going to be dealing with those problems, even as new immigrants. And that's true whether you're from Ethiopia, that's true whether you're from Asia, from India, or whether you're from Iraq or what have you, which is what you're calling for, engaging America past, present, and future.
Absolutely. And this is a very burning conversation in the Muslim community today. There are some realizations that are well in place now that were not in place 20 years ago. Muslim immigrants to the United States are even becoming much more aware of the reality of race. And the reality of race is a social construct, not as just a sort of a legal construct that you check a box. I mean, you can be legally white, then some people fly some planes into a building and you become socially non-white. And that leaves you with the reality of non-whiteness in a society that has been in large part defined by white supremacy, and how you're going to deal with that. Right. So those conversations are ongoing now, and I think that for me, the biggest challenge for Islam in America, in a sense, becomes becoming, on the one hand, self-authenticating to the point that it is what American Muslims think about America that determines what American Muslims do about America, not what Muslims in some other part of the world might think about America. This is a very serious a challenge that is presently being engaged. And then I think that the other thing is that Muslims have to be very careful about overindulging the impulse to become pragmatic, by which I mean that we become overly interested in protecting our interests rather than protecting our principles. And I think that's a problem that the Muslim community has to come to terms with. But these are ongoing and very vigorous conversations, and my own anticipation is that they're going to get better and better as we proceed.
But that's really a process of Americanization, too.
But Americanization,
become more pragmatic, more opportunistic, yes, more concerned with just your interests. If you're concerned with principles, you're too visionary, you're too idealistic. You need to grow up and deal with the mainstream and some kind of, they say pragmatic. I hate to use that word pragmatic, because John Dewey just turns over in his grave. Mm-hmm. It's opportunistic for the most part.
There you go.
And that's very different. Pragmatists have visions and ideals, and they try to apply them to varying circumstances. But opportunists are just grabbing at opportunities in order to pursue their own interests. It's more Machiavellian than it is Deweyan in that sense. And that is very, very American at its worst. We've had some wonderful examples of the other. But for me, one of the things that Muslims bring, that prophetic Islam brings to America, is the sense of America as both a democratic experiment and as an empire. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard in
here to see it.
In the Islamic world, people know the relation between Saudi Arabia and Washington. So when Hillary Clinton says, "Oh, Iran is moving to become a military dictatorship," we have nothing to do with military dictators. And they're walking around holding hands with the head of Saudi Arabia. Prophetic Islamic folks say, "Please, America, I was born at night, but not last night. Don't insult my intelligence." And the same would be true in regard to the Middle East. The people know that a Palestinian life does not have the same value as an Israeli life. If 500 Israelis are shot dead, there's going to be a press conference in the middle of the night. If 500 Palestinians are shot dead, silence. That says something about the value of a life. So you begin to raise questions. Well, what is it then about America's foreign policy? Because most of us inside of the United States rarely engage in public critique of U.S. foreign policy. Whereas when you come in as a Muslim, you've already had some exposure to the underside of the imperial tentacles of the American government. And that gives you a very different perspective. It seems to me that those of us who have been on the inside for a long time have much to learn in that regard. And yet I hear what you're saying. On the other, when you get here, you can't just be obsessed with what's going on somewhere else. When you got Trenton, Philadelphia, Harlem, Southside Chicago, East Los Angeles coming at you.
Yeah, and I think that one of the problems that we confront as a Muslim community, and I think that it may be hard for many of the people in the room to really fathom what's going on here. I think that we have to think back to some earlier communities, think back to the Catholic community, for example, maybe 75, 80 years ago, and its relationship with Rome. And I'm not talking about a sort of a political linkage as much as I'm talking about the whole phenomenon of religious authority. And this is even sort of promoted and perpetuated by the powers that be here. When you see representatives of Islam on the television screen, or you even hear them on NPR or whatever, it is rarely a Muslim who was born and raised in this country. And one of the reasons for that is that the whole notion of an American expression of Islam being an authentic expression of Islam as opposed to some kind of exceptional sort of not having arrived yet pseudo-Islamic articulation, that's still out there. That's out there in parts of the Muslim community. That's out there in the general community. So what we have to contend with is the whole notion of wresting enough interpretive authority as Muslims to be self-representative in articulations of Islam and self-representative in the agenda that we establish for Muslims in America. And I think that's a very long, it's a very difficult process, and it ain't for the faint-hearted.
What would be the best examples of prophetic Islam in America right now? Organizations or alliances, networks?
Yeah, I think that there are some pockets. I mean, the one that really comes to my mind is an organization out of Chicago called IMAN, Inner City Muslim Action Network, and they're located in Chicago, and it's a very impressive amalgamation of Blackamerican and immigrant Muslims coming together for the service of the people. They have job training facilities. And by the way, it's not just for Muslims, it's for Muslims and non-Muslims. They have re-entry programs for prisoners coming out of the penitentiary. A major, nobody wants to touch this issue. And it's a major issue in the community. They have clinics, free clinics in the community where people with illnesses come in, doctors donate their time, and they get free medical care. They have a number of activities. In fact, I'm going out there about 3 weeks from now for the annual fundraiser to be able to continue this very kind of process. So there are a number of entities out there like that. And again, I think that for Muslims in America, you will see what you refer to as much more prophetic Islam once this process of consummating the whole issue of having arrived at a level of religious authority, that this community becomes self-authenticating. I don't think I can stress that enough. But once that happens, I think the sky will be